Ladies and gentlemen, today is a beautiful day, second day of the Prevention Week Summit, and I take this opportunity to welcome all of us back here.
It is my privilege and honor to invite my big brother and friend, all the way from the US, Mr. Carlton Hall, to share with us what he does.
The first charge I want to offer you is this definition here. It's be disruptive. Everybody say disruptive. Disruptive. The definition, I got this off of Facebook. Don't judge me. All right? But I like what it says. What it says is that to be disruptive means to prevent something from continuing or operating in a normal way. How many of you will agree with me that there are some things that are operating in a normal way in our society that needs disruption? Does that make sense? Clap yourselves and give yourselves a round of applause. Go ahead, you can sit down. So the charge is for us to be disruptive. If we are doing prevention, we are being disruptive of things that have become normalized in our society, right? In the US, it's African American History Month or Black History Month. The man that you see here on the screen is Dr. Martin Luther King. Besides my father, he, I believe, is the greatest American that has ever lived. And part of what it is that I learned from him, he's been the greatest coalition leader that I think our nation has ever seen. And part of what he shares is he shares that there's a very fierce urgency of now. I like what he says here. I'm going to read this to you because I think it's important for us. He says, we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. Every young person here is not the leader for tomorrow. You're actually a leader today. He says, we are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. And this is what I want to get to. He says, this is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. I want to let you know that prevention, demand reduction, has to be vigorous and positive action. Does that make sense to anybody? If it does, understand your role in this, because if we are talking about a fierce urgency of now, what does that look like? I will tell you what it looks like in the United States. In the United States, it looks like an opioid crisis that has killed more people in our country than 1 million people over the last 10 years. 1 million people have died as a result of that. And as a result of that, we are also dealing with a growing trend of legalizing and normalizing cannabis and marijuana use across our nation. At the same time, hallucinogens, psychedelics have become much more normalized in our society. New psychoactive substances are finding their ways in our streets, and what we're dealing with is a mixture of methamphetamines and cocaine that's taking place in our country, that is ravaging our country, and young people every single day have become much more normalized to vaping and doing things in a way that is harmful to them. But it's not only that. In communities where there are people of color, those underserved communities, they are going through all of that, but they're also dealing with trauma that they are impacted by. This is something that we are dealing with in the United States, but it's not just the U.S. that I'm concerned about. How many of you will agree with me that these things are happening here in Africa as well? Right? And so part of what it is that I want to share with you is that throughout the continent, we are dealing with these very fierce urgencies. What is it that we as preventionists believe? I suggest that we believe 3 things. First and foremost, we believe that the most effective way of dealing with any problem is to prevent that problem before it starts. The second thing we believe is that we believe in the full engagement and the full empowerment of our community in their role in both understanding the problem and being part of solving the problem. You cannot solve anything without the community being involved. And the last thing we believe as preventionists, as those that believe in prevention, is we believe in being guided by science. Everybody say science. Guided by science in order to produce population level change. Population level change is vitally important for us. It's great to do things at the individual level, but if we are not affecting change at the population level, we are not being as effective as we need to be. When you're a grandparent, what happens is that God gives you a gift. He says you can't open it until you become a grandparent. When you open it, what you find out is that there's this whole level of love you knew nothing about. I look at my grandchildren. They call me Babu. Yeah, I'm Babu. When I go to my children's home to visit my grandchildren, I say Babu. That's the sweetest sound in the world. And when I go there, I'm expecting the heavens to open up, and I'm expecting the trumpets to declare because Babu has arrived. But what I find when I go into my children's home, I find something funny. I find that even though I have a couple of degrees, for the life of me, I can't figure out how to get up and down the stairways because I can't figure out how to open up that gate at the stairs. And I find out that I can't open up cabinets in my children's home, and I can't plug in things, and other things are restricted. I don't know what's going on, but in this house, who's the priority? Is it Babu? Who's the priority in this house? Say it loud. Who's the priority? The babies, right? The children are the priority. Is there any doubt who the priority is in this environment? There's zero doubt who the priority is in this environment. Am I right? In this environment, it's very clear who the priority is. Prevention is about finding and identifying the most vulnerable members of our population, like the children, like the babies are vulnerable, and identifying where they are most vulnerable, like the top of the stairs is an invisible vulnerability, right? Across their lifespan. And most importantly, just like that gate at the top of the stairs, prevention must be obvious. Everybody say prevention must be obvious. Prevention must be obvious. Just like the gate at the top of the stairs makes an invisible vulnerability blatantly obvious. This is the work that you all are involved with, that you all are engaged in. You are in the work, you are in the business of making sure that we are prioritizing the most vulnerable within our society and prioritizing the environments that place them at highest risk. And it is up to us to make sure that all of those invisible vulnerabilities become blatantly obvious, just like my grandbabies. Does that make sense to anybody here in the room? And if that does, this is one of the reasons why I think across the lifespan, from infancy through childhood, early school age years, through adolescence, through university period, to adulthood, there are invisible vulnerabilities that place our most vulnerable at great risk. And it's these things that it's up to us. If we don't do it, it won't get done. We have to make them blatantly obvious. Does that make sense? This is one of the reasons why I am so grateful for Nakata. One of the things that Nakata helps us to do is to identify these invisible vulnerabilities within our society throughout the lifespan. And they do that by providing us with resources, understanding that the data collection effort that they went through in this country identifies the developmental periods and all of the various vulnerabilities within this country that need protection, that need a gate put in front of it. If they do that, if we do that and do that well, then we are making prevention obvious and we are creating a new norm. This is what being disruptive looks like. So if we do that, how many of you will also agree with me that we can't do it by ourselves, but we need others to join up with us, to link arms with us, and become that wall of protection for our society. But if we're going to do that and do that well, then we need to make sure that folks understand the urgency. And so here's what I want to share with you. Folks may be familiar with this thing called the continuum of care. And what this represents is that prevention, if you see on the blue shaded side, prevention, and these are prevention programs, typically happen before diagnosis takes place. And then after diagnosis takes place, then we come in with treatment services, aftercare services, recovery services. Many here in this room are not only dealing with treatment and recovery, but you're also dealing with prevention. And we typically refer to this as being upstream or downstream, right? And so somebody that's working in prevention never usually works with others that are in treatment and recovery because one is upstream and one is downstream. But what I want to offer to you, Kenya, is that whether you're working upstream or downstream, everybody say with me, there's only one stream. We have to work together. We have to be able to understand the importance and the relationship between prevention, treatment, and recovery, which is why this National Prevention Summit is so vitally important for our nation. I applaud Nakata for taking the lead and making this happen for you all, because as we are doing this, what we're really doing is we are building bridges of connection for ourselves, and the bridges of connection are happening because public health and criminal justice are all of a sudden having to work together to deal with the urgent problems that I talked about earlier. And if we're doing and building that bridge, I'm here to suggest to you that the cornerstone of that bridge is prevention. And the way it works here in this country is so incredibly impressive, because what I have seen is that Nakata is working to make sure that parents have the resources that they require, but also that they're working in schools and making sure schools have guidelines and presence in our schools to understand the important role that prevention plays. They have worked on an important prevention strategy to look at the systems that are in place that all of us have to play a role in. And if we are doing that and doing that well, we are also looking at issues such as the reintegration of those in recovery to make sure that that happens. Nakata is serving as the cornerstone within this country of building the bridges of connection between prevention, treatment, and recovery. Give Nakata a round of applause again. Understand your role in all of that. The vast majority of persons with opioid use disorder have had previous trouble with other substances. This is not merely an opioid issue. It is what our scientists have called a polysubstance issue. Everybody say polysubstance. That means more than one drug is at play. In the United States, as you're looking at that picture, what that picture represents is that every single day, more than 250 Americans die. Every single day to overdose. That is like a mid-sized commercial airplane crashing every single day. How many of you agree with me that if a mid-sized commercial airplane was crashing every single day, everything would stop until we figured out what to do? Would you agree with me on that? The same thing is occurring here. And the most important aspect of this is that they found out that more than half of those were caused by more than one substance. So polysubstance is the real problem. And one of the things that I want to share with you and make sure that we get from this, one of the things that I want you to leave with is the fact that we have to recognize polysubstance use, whether it's intentional or not intentional. Some folks are using stimulants and depressants at the same time because they are falsely believing that one will counteract the other and it'll help them to navigate and to balance. Some are mixing alcohol with other drug use, thinking that this is something that is possible for them to do without recognizing the dangers that are caused by that. Some people are using polysubstances intentionally. Others are using polysubstances unintentionally. But polysubstance use and abuse is the rule, not the exception. And it's an invisible vulnerability that has to be made blatantly obvious within our society. If you agree with that, say yes. Amen, amen, amen. It also has to deal with the vulnerability of the adolescent brain. There's a number of adolescents that are here, and I'm so excited to see you. I see you all as leaders. What we know is that right now, as intelligent as you are, as creative as you are, as much of a leader as you are, this is also a crucial time of vulnerability for yourselves as well. And so when substances are being used by adolescents, what's happening is that that vulnerable brain is very subject to the issues and the challenges that we are here to address. And so what the science tells us is that when young people use one substance, they are very, very likely to use multiple substances. The most important resource that we have to address this are young people. You. Those of you who are here in this room. Why? How many of you will agree with me that a guy in a suit and tie, I don't care if I did dance, is probably not the best communicator to make sure that this message is adopted by young people in our society? Does that make sense? Who's the best people to make sure that this message gets out to other young people? The youth, right? You are the leaders right now. It is up to you, because right now, like my grandbabies, there are a lot of vulnerable people that are entering into spaces and making choices and decisions based on false information, based on myths that have them endangering not just themselves, but others within their family and society. I need your creativity. I need your intelligence. I need your talent to be able to stand up and become what I refer to as prevention influencers. Everybody say prevention influencers. I see you all as prevention influencers. Everybody know what an influencer is? I see you as prevention influencers, and here's what I want to share with you. There's a young man by the name of Tom Agalo. I don't know if he's here. He is someone that I met in Zambia, in Lusaka. He was at the African Union, him and others. There were 2 young ladies with him that were also representing your country. When everybody was there at that high-level meeting, a group of young people were going through a training that I helped to write. And that training was to help them become prevention influencers. And I want to let you know that that young man and those young people represented your country well. Give them a round of applause. If you hear my message and take it seriously, all I ask you to do is to do this on behalf of others that we care about, because in a very real sense, the job of a preventionist is to become disruptive to the things that have become normalized in our society. And if you do that and do that well, then on behalf of Ethan, that's my grandson, and those are the twins. That's Valentina, and that's Carmen. And when they turned 5, I took them out, and they think that they're princesses. And so I wanted to make sure that they see themselves as princesses, right? And here's what I recognized. When I took this picture, I recognized that those little girls think they live in a world where there's absolutely nothing that will get in the way of the vision that they had of themselves that day. And so here's what I want to share with you. I want to thank each and every one of you for becoming a prevention influencer, because I'm bringing my grandbabies to Kenya. And when I bring them here, I want them to know that there are people that are here that care about them so much. They help to change some of the things that are going on in their communities. I want to thank you for your leadership. I want to thank you for your love. I want to thank you for your time. God bless you all. Mungu awabariki sana. God bless you.